It is just a huge honor for me today to be podcast interviewing Mike Gilroy with LendingClub Patient Solutions. It's lendingclub.com. He's a senior vice president and responsible for leading LendingClub Patient Solutions, which provides quality, reasonable, and innovative financing for elective medical and dental procedures. Mike brings over 3 decades of sales, marketing, and business development experience to the company. With half of that experience in the patient financing industry, Mike was CEO and a co-founder of Springstone Financial, which became the country's second largest provider of patient financing prior to its acquisition by LendingClub in 2014. Prior to Springstone, Mike was executive vice president of sales, marketing, and business development at AmeriFee LLC, where he led its expansion into dental, lasik, fertility, and cosmetic financing. AmeriFee, at that point, one of the nation's largest providers of patient financing, was acquired by Capital One, where Mike served as director of marketing and business development. Prior experiences include Dentsply International, where Mike served as director of sales and marketing for the Caulk Division. He holds a Bachelor of Science from the University of Notre Dame and a Master's in Management from the Kellogg School of Management, Northwestern University. My God, it's an honor to have you on the show today.
Thank you, Doctor.
So when you were at Dentsply, was that when the CEO was John Miles?
Yes, it was.
Oh, my God, I love John Miles. I started lecturing, back in the 90s, and he went to my seminar one time, and we had dinner that night, and we probably had dinner every couple of years for decades, and that man was so amazingly brilliant.
Yes, he really was, had encyclopedic knowledge of dental materials.
Where's he at now?
I know he was on the board for a number of years, and at this point, I couldn't tell.
Let me start this show by saying a couple of observations. Number one, last year, 2017, America bought 17 million new cars, and the average price was $35,000. Not one, hardly, what percent of those cars do you think were paid in cash versus finance?
It's a tiny percentage.
Yeah, almost nobody writes a check for $35,000. They all finance it. Then you look at dentists in every single city and every single county, and there's one dentist in town that every month sells a case about the cost of that average new car, $35,000, implants, bridges, whatever. And then the other 95% of the dentists in that town have never sold one in their entire life. And they always say, well, my patients don't have any money. It's like, dude, there's a guy across the street from you that sells an average new car, $35,000 case every single month. And what percent of your patients bought a new car one time for that average $35,000 price? Probably 80% of their patients. And then I'm Irish, and we had our pedigree traced back, and we're 100% Irish all the way back to the famine. And when those Irish came here, the only jobs were in textiles, and there was about 100 different sewing machine companies, and they all went underway because the singer, old man singer, he was the one who introduced financing. And he'd sit there and he'd tell these Irish guys getting off boats with only a shirt on their back, said, you don't have $50 for a sewing machine, but I'll give you a sewing machine, and you can get a job for $3 a week. And when you get paid on Friday, you bring old man Singer one of those $3. And so since he started financing all the sewing machines, the only sewing machine your mom and grandma ever heard of was Singer. So financing is everything. So what have you learned being in the dental, LASIK, cosmetic surgery? What have you learned in dental financing in your decades of doing this?
Well, a number of things. Most importantly, that it's critical to offer products that are attractive to your patients. And it's critical not to make any assumptions about your patients. You basically want to develop a menu of payment options for your practice that works for the practice as well as the patients. The vast majority of patients are going to pay cash, credit card, check for their treatment. But there's a significant percentage, somewhere between 20 and 40%, who will be interested in an alternative, depending on the size of the case. And so it's important that we not assume anything about our patients when we're talking about financial arrangements. I often make the analogy that when you go into a restaurant, the waiter doesn't assume whether you want chicken, fish, or beef, right? He just offers them to you, treats them all equally, doesn't give you an attitude about any one of the choices, and lets you choose what you prefer. And we ought to really approach our financial arrangements in the same fashion. Lay them out, not try to guess who has cash and who doesn't, who's wealthy and who isn't. who's able to pay and who isn't. Just lay out the options, all of which work for both the practice and the patient, and let them choose which one they're interested in.
And when they do try to diagnose the patient, they get it exactly 100% wrong because, you know, everyone I know that has money, like my car is a 2004. I could buy a new one today. I could buy a Lamborghini today. Everyone I know that has $1 million of cash in their bank account pretty much looks like a homeless person. And when you see someone driving a Mercedes or all these things like that, oh, they're leasing it, they're fake it till you make it. So you think that person, oh, this person's got money. Hell, they're overextended broke. But that poor man over there in the plaid pants, and you sit there and think that, you know, he doesn't have a nickel. That's the guy that might have 100,000 cash in his checking account.
Absolutely.
So what is the average size of a finance case in dentistry?
You know, I mean, in dentistry overall, it's somewhere in the low 4 digits, you know, three digits, 4 digits. What's interesting is that the average patient doesn't have $500 in cash lying around. So even those relatively modest cases can be a challenge for them and can put a pinch for them. The more interesting cases, though, for every practice are when you get well into 4 figures and 5 figures. And for those cases, just as you mentioned earlier, when you're buying a car, almost no one is going to be interested in paying cash. It's disruptive to most budgets, with the exception of your guy in plaid who has $1 million in the bank. Everyone else would be interested in smoothing that out a little. They might do that relatively short term with something like a no interest product. They may want to do it for 84 months. The important thing is not to make assumptions about the patient.
Yeah, and I like that analogy of a waiter. I mean, they're just letting you go. What I love about you, and by the way, I asked you to come on the show, and you didn't know who I was. You didn't ask me. So when you're listening to this, these aren't commercials. These aren't sales pieces. I mean, I'm trying to find you the best information available. So I tracked down Mike. But one of the things I really like about the Lending Club is that when you qualify, you show them the amounts they qualify for. You're not. It's not like I'm sending in a treatment plan and then you say yay or nay. I send in my data and you tell me what I'm able to borrow.
That's right. That's right.
And that could be a game changer. I mean, it might be grandma trying to get financing for a denture over 2 implants, and then she sees she qualifies for $15,000. That might say, well, hell, then I want the 6th implant. I want the all-on-4.
You know, it's a great point. We let the patient know and the practice, you know, what they qualify for, what that monthly payment can be over a range of terms, the exact APR that they would pay for that. And practices find that as the size of the case goes up, patients start to read the fine print. There's a lot of patient financing options that are based on credit cards, and they work okay within a certain case size. But as the cases get into high 4 figures and certainly into 5 figures, patients want to understand the interest rate. They want to understand if there's penalty rates. They want to understand if there's late fees. So, you know, it's important to walk your patients through the program and get them comfortable with the options in front of them.
Well, you're talking to my dentist, and my dentists want to read about root canals, fillings, and crowns. So, like when you said APR, they don't even know what that means. So walk them through that. What is APR, and what should they know about interest rates, and dumb it down, because these guys they want to place implants. They don't want to figure out. Most dentists can't even reconcile their own bank statement from Chase. Okay, so walk them through. What is APR? Walk them through. What do they need to know on this?
As it relates to patient financing, APR is just a fancy way of saying interest rate. And for really all of the major programs, that's all you have to know is it means interest rate.
But what does it stand for?
Annual percentage rate. And what it does is capture the total cost. So if there's any upfront fees, it translates those into an interest rate. Virtually none of the patient financing programs have those kind of fees, so it's not really applicable, but that's why there's a distinction between the simple interest rate and the APR.
And what should the dentist know about this when he's explaining this to the patient?
Well, the interesting thing that we see, because our program for paying overtime with interest, if you will, has what we call a risk-based interest rate. And by that, I mean the interest rate the patient gets is based on their credit profile. It's not the same for everyone. Most of the programs in the industry are one fixed interest rate no matter who you are. The problem with that as you get into bigger cases is that patients don't accept that rate, right? If a patient knows that they're very creditworthy, and they're going to expect a rate that reflects that. And so if they're offered a 14 or 16% rate, they're apt to say, you know what, I can do better than that, I know, let me go elsewhere and find a rate. That's not good for the practice, right? We just soon move forward, schedule treatment. The thing that LendingClub offers is a rate that can be as low as 3.99%, all the way on up to 24.99%. So those are all fixed rates that will never change, and they're based on the consumer's credit. So that's really important in terms of larger cases where the patient gets very focused on things like the interest.
So what is the average interest rate now for these cases? 4-digit versus 10-digit?
You know, the average credit card rate is well into the teens. The average rate for our installment loans, where you pay over time with interest, is closer to 11%. And that's a big difference. We see a steady decline in the acceptance rate by the patient as the interest rate goes higher. So there's a fair amount of sensitivity, and patients are roughly half as willing to move forward when they're presented with a rate in the teens as they are with a rate that's closer to 10%.
So then what would my dentist have to do for her to be able to tell the patient, we can finance this interest-free?
Well, and that's one of the options, and it ought to be alongside paying with cash and paying over time with interest. Those are all important options to offer. The difference is that for the no-interest programs, the terms tend to be much shorter. As your doctors are probably aware, with the no-interest programs, the cost of the practice is a little higher. They are, in essence, paying the interest for the patient. And as a result, the terms tend to be shorter. Typically 24 months is about as long as any of the programs go. And the term has a lot to do with the affordability. And everything starts out with affordability. The patient doesn't care about interest rates and other aspects until they decide to themselves, oh, I could fit that into my budget. So the most important thing is to show the patient an option that they can grapple with in terms of their budget and their personal finances. And since you have no idea what that is, the important thing is to present that menu, chicken, fish, or beef, without any bias, and let the patient indicate to you which one that is. So if the patient has plenty of cash, they're not going to finance at all. There's no reason for them to fill out an application. They're going to pull out their credit card, or they're going to write you a check. But if they're interested in those options, then things like no interest might appeal to them. However, the payment on a no interest option is going to be significantly higher, perhaps 3 times as high as their lowest payment on an extended plan.
Well, how do you make money on a no interest plan?
The money that we make is primarily from the fee that the practice is paying.
So the dentist takes a discount to offer a no interest.
Absolutely.
And what is that discount?
It varies. For no interest as short as 6 months, that may only be a 5% discount. When you get up to 12 months, it's usually closer to 10. When you get into the 24-month, that can be as high as 15% of the case. Again, if this is an incremental case, if it's a large case, it may be very profitable for the practice. Maybe that's okay from the practice's point of view. But it's important not to oversell the no interest option. Many practices fall into this. Quite honestly, many treatment coordinators fall into this, where they promote that as if it was the answer to every financial question. And it really isn't. It's just fish, right? Not everybody wants fish. And so you ought to lay out all the options. Some patients are much better off with a fixed interest rate that will never change, even if they're late, and gives them a much lower payment that is not going to cause them any problems. Any financial problems that the payment options create after the fact are going to reflect on the practice. So it's very important for the practice to help the patient get into the right product for their situation.
You keep going back to the waiter saying, that waiter's not going to diagnose whether you want fish or chicken or beef. Dentists, they just, like say 95% of dentists will never sell a $35,000 treatment plan in their entire life, yet 80% of their patients will buy a brand new car in their lifetime. And last year, Americans bought 17 million new cars at an average price $35,000. And you do, so this dentist is listening to you right now. Most of them are commuting to work, but you're also big in fertility, hair, bariatric. I'm surprised I'm not one of your clients. I qualify for all of those. But like, how much are people spending on fertility or bariatric or hair? I mean, what do those cases look like?
Sure. The average fertility case for IVF, in vitro fertilization, will run well over $14,000. Our average transaction for those markets is in that $13,000, $14,000 range. For hair restoration, for surgical hair replacement, you're looking at right around $10,000. 20% of the cases that we finance with our extended plan are over $20,000, even in dentistry.
Say that again. Repeat that.
20% of the total volume of our financing is for cases in dentistry that are over $20,000. We do a tremendous amount of the large case financing in dental. And the reason is because we offer lines that are large enough, and we offer those risk-based rates, those single-digit, in many cases, interest rates that the patient's willing to accept and go forward. Just as you don't tend to pay double-digit rates for a car loan, you really shouldn't be paying double-digit interest rates for a dental loan for $20,000 or $30,000 or $40,000.
So you're saying I'm saving myself $10,000 by sticking to my bald head?
You are.
My God, Ryan, my bald head looks even more beautiful to me now. And $14,000 in fertility. What's the average bariatric case?
It varies quite a bit based on insurance coverage. The total cost is often up into the $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 range. Often, what's financed will be closer to $25,000 or $30,000.
And and I want to say something else on that. When that average American buys a car for $35,000, how long does that car actually last?
The quality of cars has gone up over time, and those cars will be around for quite a while these days.
But how long? Okay, so you're saying 10 years?
Yes.
Okay, bariatric surgery. I mean, I don't have a big sample size, but of my patients who got the bariatric surgery, all of them lost 100 pounds the first year. And within 3 years, they were all back to their starting weight. Mm-hmm. I don't have, so these dentists, they'll do an implant case, and then 5, 6, 7 years later, it's got periimplantitis and it starts to fail, and they just beat themselves up. I mean, your refrigerator isn't going to last 10 years. Your car isn't going to last 10 years. Bariatric surgery, in my opinion, only lasts a couple of years, and dentists got to start feeling comfortable with saying, I got a friend that does hips. I mean, a hip surgeon, he'll look at grandma in the eye and say, 3 years, 3 years, if you're really lucky, maybe 10. But dentists always think, well, if I do this, you're going to take this case to heaven with you someday. You're going to have all these pretty dentistry. Every single thing fails. Everything fails. Hell, this entire solar system is going to be sucked into a black hole someday. Everything fails. And dentists need to start financing over terms and start talking to the patient. The satisfaction equals perception minus expectation. So the greatest way to raise satisfaction is lower their expectations. I do it with pain afterwards. I tell people all the time, my God, when this anesthetic wears off, you're probably going to want a gun or some rope. I mean, this is not going to be pretty. This tooth was abscessed. This extraction. This tooth had a hook on it. You're probably just going to want to die in about 3 or 4 hours. So I set the expectation on the floor, and every time they come back for the suture, I go, Dr. Farran, you're not going to believe it. I mean, it barely hurt. And the reason it barely hurt is because I set the expectation rock bottom. How long is this going to last? Seriously, probably 5 years. I mean, if you were really, really lucky, in my last 10. So then when they're coming into your practice, my practice is 30 years old, and people are coming in here all the time saying, Dr. Farran, you remember you told me this would only last 5, 10 if I was real lucky. That was 20 years ago. See, you lower expectations and then you beat them. And it's the same thing why you don't put salespeople in charge of a company, because salespeople, by their nature, the dentist selling all the cases, they overpromise and underdeliver. And you want a manager from, accounting or engineering. You want someone that will underpromise and overdeliver. Now, by the way, let's back up a little bit. So talk about the lending club. That when I got out of school 30 years ago, I don't remember a lending club. Is that how new of a company is this?
LendingClub itself was founded back in 2007. It was really one of the first, and today is by far the largest of the what they call fintech lenders. Used to be referred to as peer-to-peer lenders. These days, we tend to use the term credit marketplace. But I think of LendingClub as being really an eBay for loans, if you will. We line up people that are looking for money, borrowers on one side of the platform, investors who have money and are interested in investing it on the other side, and really create a marketplace for those two to come together. About a third of that is still individual investors, high net worth investors, but that includes banks, family offices, registered investment advisors, hedge funds, all different types of money and appetites for risk. And that gives you a really robust funding source, very diverse, very stable. And that allows us to do a great job on the other side for borrowers.
Who are the other fintechs?
There's a number of them. Prosper is another one that folks may have heard of. SoFi is one that started out focusing on student lending.
I've noticed that Quicken is now trying to get into the mortgage business.
Yes, there's a lot of folks putting their toes in the water. 10 years in, now that LendingClub has pioneered the area, a lot of folks are starting to look at it more seriously.
Huh, that is amazing. I've read, is this true or false? I've read, they taught me formally in MBA school that in America, if you pay over $1,000 for it, 90% of the time it's financed somehow.
I think that's a fair statement. As I said earlier, the average American does not have more than about $500 of free cash available to them. The other thing that's interesting is a number of recent surveys have really illustrated that both on the expense side and the income side, the average American family is seeing a couple months a year with a dramatic surprise or fluctuation. And so that idea of spreading things out and de-risking an expenditure is really appealing to a lot of families as they try to juggle, in many cases, paycheck to paycheck. And yet, to your point, they're out buying Ford F-150s every year, and they're spending and making the commitments, but they need a way to do it comfortably with it fits into their cash flow.
And you know how much that Ford F-150 costs?
Boy, it starts out at the levels you're talking about. It can be 60 or 70,000 by the time
I have a patient who got the full deluxe, 98 grand.
Wow.
I mean, he had to walk me out in the parking lot and show me. And it's like, okay, this guy just went 100 grand into a truck, and then he's going to cry crocodile tears when I tell him that root canal and crown is going to cost $2,000. And the problem is the young dentists under 30, they buy into all this. They buy into that they should feel sorry and they should just patch it and they should just do the minimum treatment, all this stuff. And you have to realize that it's kind of your job as a dentist to know that the better money is spent saving your teeth and oral health. And if you don't get their money for oral health, they're going to take that money and spend it on iPhones and F-150s and trips to Disneyland. I love some of these stats off your website. 74 million Americans reported they had no dental coverage in 2016. That's more than the population of California and Texas combined. 6 in 10 Americans don't have enough money in savings to cover a $500 or $1,000 unplanned expense, which is a broken tooth, a toothache. You got to finance it. 32% of Americans say they skipped or put off dental care because of cost. The website. I mean, when you land on dental websites, I have podcasted probably the 25 smartest people in dental website marketing, SEO, all that stuff. They say the bounce rate is 95%. That when someone lands on your website, 95% bounce off, only 5% will call your office. When they call the office, 3 people have to call before your untrained receptionist can convert one of those 3 to come in. And then when 3 people come in with a cavity, the dentist only converts 1 to treatment. So fix any, you could fix so much on this funnel. So if half of America is afraid of the dentist and a half of America is afraid of cost, when you go to my website, the first thing you see is a 1-minute YouTube video of me saying, "Are you afraid of the dentist? Oh, come on." That's why I went to school. I love to be able to do dentistry and you say, "Oh my God, I didn't feel that shot. This didn't hurt." Raise your hand and I'll stop. We have nitrous oxide, laughing gas. It's my favorite challenge is if you're afraid of the dentist, and do it in a minute. And then Dawn, who's been my office manager for 20 years, the other half of the market is afraid of cost. In fact, I wish you would do me a huge favor. My dental website is todaysdental.com. You've got more experience than anybody. I wish you would watch my office manager's, the title of the video is, Are You Afraid of the Cost of Dentistry? And watch that video, because Ryan and I can reshoot that video in a minute. Because I think if half the people are afraid of the dentist, and all you have on your website is a mugshot of you, looks like you're a rust mugshot when you got a DUI, that doesn't make me feel anything. Why do people like scary movies? They want to feel something. Why do they like roller coasters? They want to feel something. A mugshot of a dentist doesn't make me feel anything. I got to see something that makes me secrete dopamine, serotonin, oxytocin. That's what a video is for. And the other half are afraid of the cost. And I would really like you to watch that video on my dental office website, todaysdental.com. Maybe we need to reshoot it, because you got to tell these people that, that you're afraid of the cost and you don't have $500 or $1,000, and we're going to work with you on that. And I want to point out one, I should not be giving you any feedback, but I'm going to give you feedback on my observation, okay?
Sure.
This is Dentistry Uncensored. There's only 3 publicly traded dental companies on Earth. 2 of them are in Australia, 300 Smiles and Pacific Smiles Group. And then in Singapore, it's Q&M. And you know what all 3 of those figured out about patient financing? You put all your terms in months, and you start saying, the plan, it's this much a month, this much a month. They all put it in weeks and said that if you say on your website and advertise that no matter what you need, we'll fix it for $98 a month, that doubles their close rate. Because $98 a month is actually, $98 a month, let me get that exactly, $98 a week. 98 times 4 is $392. Well, $392, that's a lot of money. But $98, everybody in America spent $98 foolishly this week. Maybe it was going out for a Mexican restaurant. Maybe it was going out for sushi. When you start saying $98, how much does a girl spend when she gets her hair done, or colored, or extensions? Everybody in the 20 richest countries of the world think, well, I got $98 a week. Shit, I spent $98 on extensions this week. Last week I went out and ate sushi with Charlene. That was $90. And when they start saying $90, but when you switch it to monthly and you start saying $392, they start putting their emotional brakes on and saying, whoa, that's a lot of money. What do you think of that?
I think it's a fair point. It's important to speak to the patient in the terms that they're thinking of. And people that are living week to week certainly are going to want to translate it to a weekly payment. So the point well taken.
Yeah. And what % of Americans do you think foolishly blew $98 last week?
Pretty high percentage.
Yeah. There's so many of them. You have so many good stats. 16.7% is the national average for a credit card APR. 4 out of 5 times LendingClub has a lower APR. 50% offers have an APR of under 10%, 9.99% or lower. That is just amazing. I want to ask you, on these cases where 20% of the case over $20,000, is there any demographic to those dentists? Are they more likely to be oral surgeons and periodontists instead of general dentists? Are they more likely to live in California as opposed to Kansas? Is there any demographic mining in anything you find in those numbers?
There's certainly some correlation with specialties. I think part of the reason is that the specialists tend to get more comfortable presenting larger cases than the GPs. But it's interesting, geographically, there really isn't. It's amazing. There are doctors around the country in the most obscure places who appreciate this notion of presenting flexible options to patient and do quite a few large cases. So it's not limited to major cities. It's not limited to specialists by any means. It's really just limited by willingness to present optimal care without blinking, and a wide range of payment options to go with it.
Who do you think older guys like me, every time we went to, I noticed that your LendingClub Patient Solutions is AGD, PACE accredited. The old guys always, we went to conventions. And the millennials, they watch it on their iPhone. We on the Dentaltown app, 60,000 dentists downloaded the Dentaltown app. We have 400 online courses there. They've been viewed almost 1 million times. Who do you think is the best person to teach my homies how to present treatment with financial arrangement options?
That's a good question. There's an awful lot of consultants out there, and for the most part, the advice they give is pretty similar. So I think more important than any one person talking about it is just thinking about how to actually implement that in the practice. That's typically where things go awry.
Well, I think the best marketing you could do, besides my podcast, is to create a my podcast is the best marketing because it costs zero, and you always get what you pay for. So if you get one set of business on this, you made a return. But no, I think you and I should try to find the world's greatest treatment plan presenter. And I wouldn't even care if they came from, it'd be nice they came from dentistry, but they could come from hair, fertility, bariatric. But we need to get someone because, the dentist went to 8 years of college, no business. The hygienist went to 4 years of college, no business. The dental assistants and the receptionists, they didn't have any training. Most all of them didn't have any training. And the next thing you know, some dentist who got A's in physics and chemistry tells Charlene to go present this $5,000 case to a patient, and they don't have any training. So then they just start assuming that nobody has any money because they're not standing out there in the parking lot watching them pull up in $35,000 cars, and they weren't with them last week when they went and got hair extensions and hair color and bariatric and fertility. So we should really make an online CE course about how to present dental treatment. In fact, if you're listening to this, I always like it when my homies send me an email, howard@dentaltown.com. I'm always blown away by who's sending me. They're usually always young. They're almost always under 30. But yesterday, this is Wednesday. Is it today Wednesday? Tuesday? I would say Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. Every single email was from Australia or New Zealand. Isn't that amazing? So they're from all over. But if you know someone that you think is a great treatment plan presenter, I want to make an online C course. And you should look around too. You got a lot of dental connections. But let's try to put our heads together so that this dental assistant with no training, this receptionist who was hired off the street. Half of my receptionists I stole from Chase Bank in my parking lot. And so they have a love-hate relationship with me. I've been banking with them for 30 years, but I've stole a couple of their best people. And they just come into dentistry and there's no training. But when my son, I remember when he was in high school, he got a job for Subway. He had to watch 8 1-hour videos at home on his own dime and pass these 10 questions on each video before he could even start. And I'm like, isn't that amazing? And he's going to make a turkey sandwich. But you're going to come work with me and do root canals, fillings, and crowns and present $5,000 treatments, and there's no training for you.
It is surprising, isn't it?
It is. So what bariatric specialist would you recommend for me in Phoenix, Arizona? Which one do you like the most?
I'll have to get back to you with a recommendation.
You'll have to get back with me on that one?
Sounds like you would rather keep the status quo.
I'm going to stay with being short, fat, and bald. And Dennis. And that fertility thing, I would have to pay, I don't know what a vasectomy reversal would cost, but yeah, it's amazing, these fertility people. I know, I have friends that have almost gone to borrowing everything they had 3 different times to make a baby. And I'm sitting here, I got 4 sons. I'm like, I'll give you 3 of my 4. Here, Ryan's sitting right here, to take Ryan. But it's amazing that people will always find money for it if they want it. If they want that smile makeover, if they want to have a Hollywood smile, if they really, really want it, they'll find the money. So in dentistry, and then a lot of dentists say they don't want to sell dentistry. And I always say, then get out of dentistry and go work in an industry that you're proud of, that you want to sell. I am honored to get you out of pain. I am honored to take a tooth that should be extracted and fix it up. I am honored. I mean, I just feel like that we're both having so much fun because you came in here in pain, you came with a broken tooth, you came with crooked teeth, and you're leaving with $1 million smile. And you know, the reason they don't want it is because you're not loving it. You're not making those patients feel the enthusiasm. And so, yeah, I'd really like to get. And I'll tell you another experience that I've seen twice firsthand. A dental assistant came and worked for a dental office doing the average, which is $750,000 a year in collections, taking home $175. She presented the treatment plan. They immediately went to 1.5. After 2 or 3 years, she said, well, why do I get $20 an hour and the hygienist gets $40? I should at least make as much as a hygienist. I want $40 an hour. And the dentist said, no way. So she quit and went across the street. His office went from 1.5 back to 750, and the office across the street went from 750 to 1.5. I know both dentists, I know the assistant, and I know this in 2 different cities. And it's
that's absolutely what we see every day.
And it's like, so someone adds $750,000 of business to your year, and she doesn't deserve $40 an hour. And that's part of this mindset. They have a mindset that the patients don't have money. They have the mindset that the treatment plan coordinator should only be paid, you know, in Bitcoin. I love the fact that they love dentistry. I mean, if I was going to go to a doctor, I'd really want that doctor to really passionately love their craft. But my job as a leader is to try to stick their nose into the business side, which they don't want to learn, the accounting side. They don't know their return asset. They don't know return equity. They don't know their overhead numbers. Even if they tell you any of their overhead numbers, they never check out right. And my job is to try to get these kids that I love that are passionate about dentistry to be passionate about business. And that's where you come in. And man, you've served so many years in dentistry. My God, what else have you? What other business principles have you picked up in dentistry over the years?
Well, I mean, I think you're touching on the key ones. You know, if the goal is to get a patient to optimal care, there's really only 2 ways to do it, right? You can do all the care now and help them pay for it over time, or you can spread the care out. And I don't think I've ever heard a doctor agree that spreading the care out was optimal for the patient. In most cases, nothing good comes from delaying things. And so if you have the option to help the patient get things taken care of now and get to optimal care, that's really what the profession is all about. So yeah, we just are honored to be able to be a small part of that. And the thing that LendingClub brings that's unique to the situation is that we offer more patient-friendly products. So a practice that's interested in growth, what we offer is products that the patient is going to be able to say yes to more easily. With our no-interest product that we talked about a few minutes ago, our product's very different than what's out there in that we're a true no-interest product. And by that I mean the product works the way the patient assumes that it will work. And what we mean is that if they pay, let's say, 24-month no interest, and maybe they miss a payment or 2 along the way, and so maybe a few $100s rolls over into that 25th or 26th month. With our true no interest product, they'll only pay interest on whatever went past 24 months. All the other programs in the industry go back to day one and charge interest on the entire amount, even though it's already been paid. That tends to upset patients. And the patients often are not happy with the person that introduced the program to them in the first place. That would be the practice. So if word of mouth is one of the most powerful marketing tools for most practices, having a patient-friendly set of financing options is really, really important to that growth and that reputation in the community.
You know, I want to talk more about patient and financing because a lot of these millennials were very confused by people like Bernie Sanders running around saying that healthcare should be free, but they don't really explain that. I mean, how would healthcare be free? Would you arrest all the physicians and dentists and chain them up in their offices and tell them to do, and then they say, oh, no, that's not what we mean. We meant we'd send the IRS to your house and confiscate more of your money, or you'll go to jail to pay these dentists. And I have very mixed feelings about that because in Arizona, where you have, take the Indian reservations where they get free dentistry. They have a 50% cancellation no-show rate. So when humans don't have any skin in the game, they don't value it. And whenever you give someone something free, like go to the Medicaid clinic, so then you go into Phoenix, and you go into any practice that just basically only does Medicaid dentistry, same thing. 50% of their patients don't show. They're coming in there. These dentists are doing dentistry at less than half the price. The Medicaid is a very slow payer. I mean, it's very difficult to run that business. And how big is the reward? Half of your patients don't even show up. So they're always saying to me, "Well, how do you schedule? Should we double book everything? Because then what happens when at that time at that hour they all show up?" And it's funny because as you get to the very high fee for service dentistry, bariatric surgery, hair transplants, and all that stuff, your no-show cancellation rate almost goes to zilch.
That's true.
And
That's true.
it's human nature. If I don't have any skin in this game, it's the same thing with housing. For years, government made low-income housing. And what did the people do to that low-income housing? Spray graffiti, treat it like crap. If you would have taken that same money and bought them their own trailer and put them in a trailer park where you said, okay, you're going to own this. This is your trailer. They wouldn't have broken out all the windows and stole the copper piping and sprayed graffiti all over that stuff. You need to learn how to manage humans. And humans want to own their own land. They want to have skin in the game. They want to make their own decisions. They don't like checks and balances. They don't like transparency. They don't like anybody else watching them. And when you're in dentistry, you just feel guilty that, oh my God, how am I going to tell Mike Gilroy that he has 9 cavities? You didn't cause the 9 cavities. Mike Gilroy's the one who showed up with a Mountain Dew in his right hand and Funyuns in his left hand and only flosses his teeth whenever a hygienist does it in a dental office. This is not my problem. So when you're young, Mike's the one who grew 9 cavities. And if Mike wants to get these 9 cavities, I want him to have skin in the game. And the more skin in the game, the more he's going to take it. And by the way, if I go into that Medicaid clinic and I give some poor kid 9 free fillings, what's the chance he's going to go home and take care of him? Versus if he came in and he had to pay out of his own allowance $10 for every one of those fillings, and he gave old man Dennis $90 that he could have bought an Xbox with, what do you think the chances that he's going to go home and brush them and floss them and take care of them? I mean, it's just simple human beings. So, and the reason I'm preaching on this is because people that tend to end up in government and healthcare always think that everyone's a victim, nobody's responsible for their own behavior, everything should be free, and that is just not how you manage or motivate people. Look what those coaches do to those kids after school, motivating them in football and soccer and basketball, making them run until they have to puke. And then you can't even get your patients to floss, and you think their dentistry should be free? I mean, come on, man. Be a dental hygiene coach. Don't be a dental hygiene mechanic, and feel proud that you have a $10,000 case to present to this person. And if they got skin in the game and they're going to pay for that and you give them $10,000 of dentistry, they're going to go home and brush it and floss it and take care of it.
Oh, absolutely. And if they have those 9 cavities, it's really not fair not to talk about correcting all 9 at once. You know, stretching it out, who would think of doing that? And yet, how many dollars of treatment are sitting in dental files all over the country that haven't been presented?
Okay, the only data I have on hundreds of millions of insurance claims processed, I'm just talking about a cavity that you can see on a bite wing radiograph. They only drill, fill, and bill 38%. So they don't even do 2 out of every 3. And we're talking cavities, not bleaching, bonding, veneers, hair transplants, and bariatric surgery. We're talking about just a simple routine cavity. They can only get 1 out of 3 done. And then inside that building, I could drive you around Phoenix all day long to these medical dental buildings where they'll have 4, 6, 8 dentists in one. And you'll see 7 guys doing $750, and they're doing that 38% close rate. And then there's one guy at the end of the hall, and he convinces 2 out of 3 to get the cavity done. And he's doing $1.5 million. And then you go to those other 7 dentists and say, well, what's wrong with you? And, oh, it's never the man in the mirror. It's the president. It's the economy. It's Putin. It's North Korea. It's everything but the man in the mirror, which is my favorite Michael Jackson song, because in my opinion, the people who spend more time judging others, backseat driving the government, you know, they've got the answers to the United Nations, Washington, D.C., and then I'm like, dude, look in the mirror. Look at your own your own house. Look at everything that's wrong in your life, and you spend all your time trying to give advice to how to manage North Korea. Why not? You haven't helped your own kid do its homework one time this year, and you got advice for Putin? Really? Why don't you unpack your kid's backpack when he walks home and pull out all the trash and the gum wrappers and find his homework and get him? Why don't you manage your kid and stop trying to manage Putin? So again, it's just simple management. So what else? What do you think? We talked about those other areas. My dentist, they know dentistry. What do you think they could learn from the bariatric surgery, hair transplant, and fertility doctors? What do you think? Do any of those do more financing than the dentist? Or is dentist number one? Or where do we fall on those four?
It's interesting. In a lot of ways, patient financing is probably more mature and more established and more widespread in dentistry than it is in most other areas of elective healthcare. That being said, the interesting thing about dentistry is that it's relatively easy to break a large dental case into smaller cases. And so there's an awful lot more presentation of partial cases, if you will, in dentistry. If you're going to do in vitro fertilization, you either do it or you don't do it. For the most part, if you're going to do hair restoration, you're presenting about the same cost. So, a lot of these other elective specialties, I think, skip past that issue of whether I should present the entire treatment that I could provide because they don't really have any alternative. In dentistry, I think there's a lot of different materials, a lot of different techniques. There's a lot of different variables. And so the actual treatment plan can vary quite a bit. And then you layer on whether financing is presented well on top of that in terms of creating affordability. And you just see a much wider range. To your point, the 750 versus the $1.5 million. You see a lot more variation in what the practices actually produce in situations that really aren't all that different to begin with.
Okay, this is Dentistry Uncensored, so I've been nice to you for a long time. Now it's time to toughen up a little bit and start asking the uncomfortable questions, because I know what my homies are thinking. They're thinking, well, I already have care credit. What's the difference between care credit and LendingClub? If you got one, you got them all? Or are they different?
No, LendingClub is pretty dramatically different. As I say, more patient-friendly. And if you're thinking in terms of your brand as a practice, word of mouth is a key marketing tool. I think that really matters. So I already talked about our true no interest product. We don't have what we refer to as retroactive interest. We don't charge you if you go 1 month past the 24 all the way back to the first dollar. So that's a much better patient experience with that product. With our extended plan, where you pay over time with interest, the big difference there is that we give you the interest rate you've earned through your past behavior. If you go with care credit, you'll be charged the same interest rate regardless of whether you have an 800 FICO score or a 500 FICO score, because everyone gets the same interest. And the problem with that is that for small cases, maybe people don't care. But when you get into large cases, people are sensitive to that rate. And if it isn't the rate they've earned, they're going to think about it, go elsewhere, postpone a decision, and not schedule, which ultimately is really where we'd like to see them.
Yeah, and that's another thing that's so crazy. So you go into any of these medical dental buildings with a dozen dentists in there, right? And the dentist will always say, well, we'll just numb up this side or just this one quadrant, and we'll just do the 2 fillings over here. And then next door is an oral surgeon who every single patient numbs up all 4 quadrants and takes out all 4 wisdom teeth. I mean, so if a dentist if you can just get them to stop saying, well, let's do the right side this time. Like my next doctor appointment is a colonoscopy. I wouldn't want to go in there and have him go half the way up one time and then come back in a week and he goes the other half of the way. I mean, just go in, I want him to go where no man has ever gone before and just get her done. And if I had to go to the dentist, I would much rather have my whole mouth numbed up and the whole thing done than have it broken up in 2 or 3 or 4 different trips to the dentist. God, just getting them to go. And the reason I keep saying so many of these these lessons is a quarter of my viewers are still in dental school. And the rest of them are pretty much all under 30. They email me, howard@dentaltown.com. Maybe it's because the 50-year-olds don't know how to email. I don't know. Maybe they're older than email. But the bottom line is, if you can just get them to go from quadrant to right side, you'll double their business. If you can get them to go for just full mouth, I mean, I just assume, I just say, well, the easiest thing to do, let's just numb up. Let's schedule a nice 2-hour appointment, numb everything up, and just get her all done. And what does almost everyone say? That sounds awesome. No one says, well, I'd like to break it up into 4 different appointments. I mean, I haven't heard that in 30 years. Now, they might want to break it up because of finances, but they don't want to break it up as far as the dentistry is done. So you need to just start presenting. Don't go in there and say, well, the crown is $650 and the root canal is $995, and you itemize out this 30 deal. Omar Reed's the one who taught me how to present dentistry. He goes, you go in there and you tell them the number. Just go in there and tell them, okay, to do what we want to do everything we talked about is going to be $5,000. How would you like to pay for that? That was Omer's deal. And then you go across the street and say, well, tooth number 3 is going to need an MOD composite, and tooth number 4 is going to need a DO composite, and the insurance will pay, what does insurance pay? $1,000 max. So your treatment's $5,000, insurance will pay $1,000. How would you like to take care of that $4,000? Do you have $4,000? Do you have it in, and do you want to put on a credit card? Do you want me to go see if you're approved for financing with LendingClub? And the more confident and quicker, faster, succinct you say it, more humans and Americans want yes. I mean, who doesn't want to have all their teeth fixed up?
No, that's absolutely right. And to be honest, in our experience, I think a quick, very standardized 20 or 30-second spiel along those lines is the right way to do it. We're not looking to make the patient feel bad about themselves. We're not looking to embarrass them. We're not looking to shame anybody. And yet that's often what happens in these financial conversations. So if you take Omar's advice and say it's going to be $6,000, but we have a number of affordable payment options. You can start with no money down and as little as this much per month. We also have some no interest options. The payment on that would be this. Or we take cash and credit cards naturally. If you do that way, we could offer you a discount that could save you this much money. Which of those would work best for you? A script along those lines lays out chicken, fish, or beef. I didn't make any judgments. I've offered you pay me in full and maybe save some money. I've offered you pay with no interest, but spread it out a bit. And I've offered you pay it over quite a few months at a really low, attractive, affordable payment. One of those is going to fit the circumstances of almost every patient. We didn't judge anybody. We didn't presume. We didn't steer them. And yet we've offered a wide range of menu options that are going to get you, most of those patients, the ability to move forward and say yes to treatment.
Where do you think that comes from? Again, you only see it in healthcare and government, where there's a lot of shaming, making you feel guilty, condescending. I mean, just every time someone on one of the parties will say something, the other party only addresses it in that it was bad and shameful and how could he say that? And I'm sitting there thinking, okay, well, if that one guy said that and there's 323 million Americans, at least 1 million people think this. So why don't you go in and address the actual statement? Why do you think healthcare and government has so much of this shaming, judgmental? So many patients have told me over 30 years they switched offices because the last hygienist talked down to them, or the dentist was very condescending, or they always felt like they were getting scolded. Where do you think that comes from? And do you believe that it's more likely to be coming from healthcare than Apple computer or Amazon?
Well, I think in business, a lot of folks address the issue of affordability head on and almost assume that some kind of affordable option is going to be most appealing to the purchaser. I think, unfortunately, in healthcare, oftentimes because of our own lack of comfort with the fee that we're suggesting, there's an awkwardness that really doesn't need to be there. To your point about the Subway sandwich videos, a little bit of practice and a little bit of planning can go an awful long way in improving the system. And so you need to have a skilled patient or treatment coordinator who's got good communication skills that is comfortable talking about the kinds of case sizes that you aspire to. If they've had bad financial experiences personally, it's going to be very hard for them to conduct the conversation the way you'd like them to. You need to think through your menu and payment options. You need to be okay with it. I can't tell you how many doctors send nonverbal signals to their team that they really hate paying that fee for the financing. And when they do that, the staff is very attentive to what the doctor wants, of course, and they shy away from offering those options because they know the doctor grumbles a bit when he has to pay that fee. Is that a good business decision? It's better to make that with your business management hat on than when you're walking down the hallway in the practice. And so it's very important to be thoughtful about the menu of payment options. If you don't want to offer fish, don't offer it, but make a good business decision about it. Get your menu in shape so it works for the practice as well as the patients. Find someone who can present it to the patients in an articulate, simple, standardized way without attitude, without judgment, without presumption, and case acceptance will go up.
Yeah, and that same dentist who says, "Well, I don't want to pay that fee to Lending Club or whatever," same guy can't even tell me what his close rate is. So, dude, for 2017, what was your close rate? What was your close rate of people offered financing versus people not offered financing? You don't know any of your numbers. You say, "Oh, I got a gut failing. I don't like it." Yeah, well, guts are filled with fecal matter and crap. I want to know what your close rate is. And if you don't know your close rate is for 2017, and it's already 16 days into 2018, you're not a very good businessman. And you should be, because dentistry is a tough job. It's a tough job. The patients are tough. The staff is tough. Learning how to do all the fancy dentistry is tough, and you should get compensated for it. And if you love doing dentistry, like I love doing dentistry, you're going to do a hell of a lot more dentistry if you finance these big cases.
And empty chair time doesn't make revenue.
Yeah. So, my gosh, I can't believe that we've been talking about patient financing for an hour. So I want to end on this. What will my homies find if they go to your website, lendingclubcorporation.com? Is it lendingclub.com? It says
LendingClub.com.
lendingclub.com.
And lendingclub.com/providers.
Is this slash providers? Okay, so I got the Lending Club. lendingclub.com/providers.
And they'll find the basic information on how to get set up with our program. Most practices these days are registered with multiple programs. I would not think in terms of just one, but I would take a hard look at the products that those programs offer and whether they align with your practice's philosophy about patient care. I think you'll find if you take a close look at Lending Club's products, they're just better products to offer your patients. Your patients relying on you as someone who deals with patient financing every day to guide them and to be consultants to them on the products and the choice of the vendors. So we partner with our practices, and our goal is to be an extension of those practices. Our goal is to be a good reflection on the practice. We take care of patients the way the practice does. And I think that's the thing to look for in any partner that the practice chooses. And if you take a close look at that with Lending Club, I think you'll like what you see. If
you could also do me another favor, on Dental Town, there's 270,000 dentists from every country on earth, and they've posted 5 million times. There's a search button, and I typed in Lending Club, and there's a bunch of threads popping up asking questions about that. I wish you go in there and answer them. It's and they love it too. The dentists absolutely love it when you're practicing in Salina, Kansas, and someone's asking about Lending Club, and then you come on there and say, "Hey, I actually work at Lending Club." I mean, that's true customer service. I think the best marketing is not something you buy anymore. It's spending time. Like, you didn't pay money to market today. You spent an hour of your time talking to me, and my homie's going to hear it on their iPhone in their car for free. And I think going in on Dental Town and spending some time, just do a search for Lending Club. And we have 50 categories, root canals, fillings, crowns, and one of them is patient finance. And then hopefully me and you can brainstorm, and maybe we'll find someone to put a patient treatment plan financial coordinator presentation together. If you're listening and you know someone or you've heard someone you think is great, email me howard@dentaltown.com and tell me who's the best person to talk about presenting treatment, because it's everything.
Oh, it sounds great.
Mike
really
Gilroy,
appreciate the time.
And what is Gilroy? Is that sounds Gaelic? Is that Irish, Gilroy?
It absolutely is.
Yeah.
We've gotten a little blended along the way, but I think I'm 3/4 or better. So.
Well, Mike, it was an honor to have someone from with your background and your prestige to come on the show today for an hour to talk to my homies. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Appreciate it, Doctor. Thanks very much.